Now I know you're probably thinking, how could Nazir and Tanya get themselves caught up in such a predicament like this? Adultery is one of the #1 causes of divorce today. How can a person get caught up in adultery? The answer is simple, that one step at a time. What are those steps? That comes up today on the Truth Be Told project.
Let's go! Let's go!
50% of all marriages end in divorce. According to the CDC, there is one divorce every 42 seconds, which makes 86 divorces per hour, 2,046 divorces per day, 14,364 divorces per week, and 746,971 divorces per year. According to the General Social Survey, around 30 to 40% of Americans cheat on their partners. And according to the health testing centers, 54.5% of marriages are dissolved due to extramarital affairs. Now, one of the aims of the Truth Be Told project is to help you live according to your intended design. Guess what? God has a specific design for marriage, and one of those designs was for it to be a lifetime commitment. I want to help you to live and have the marriage that God has designed for you to have. Here are 3 things that we'll discuss today in this video. First, we're going to talk about the different types of affairs. We're going to talking about the categories that these types of affairs fall in. Then we'll talk about some of the reasons that extramarital affairs happen. And finally, we'll talk about some of the steps that we could take to avoid adultery in the future. How can we help prevent adultery or extramarital affairs? The #1 way that we could prevent it is by taking preventative measures, being on guard, being aware of certain traps and certain pitfalls that people could fall in. Because I don't know anyone who just plans and plots before they get married that they're going to have an adulterous affair. It just doesn't happen that way. Now, all extramarital affairs fall under 2 categories. It's direct and intentional, and indirect and unintentional. So let's talk about the 2 intentional kinds of extramarital affairs. First, there is the lustful affair, meaning that you find a person attractive, and to use the lingo or some of the verbiage of the culture today, you want to smash the person that you find attractive, regardless of you being married or not. The specific goal of the lustful affair is to simply have sex. You're not trying to get caught up in any entanglements, and you're not trying to fall in love. You just simply want to do it for sexual purposes. Secondly, as a result of a spouse committing adultery because they find someone attractive, then you have those who want to have a revenge affair, meaning they're going tit for tat with their spouse that committed adultery. They simply have an affair to get back at their partner for what they've done. Now, here are some affairs that are unintentional and indirect. First, you have the emotional affair. You got some chemistry going with this person. You like the same sports. Y'all have some of the same hobbies. Y'all like some of the same things. You got a vibe going on. And so you don't necessarily plan to be connected to a person, but by simply communicating with that person, you have developed a connection. You develop some chemistry. So you mean to tell me, I know some of you are thinking, you mean to tell me that a person could have an emotional attachment to a person and that'd be considered adultery? Yes, because for the simple reason, that's how they start, with a connection. Now, I know some of you may be thinking, there has to be a reason why extramarital affairs start. And here's one of the main reasons why a person commits adultery. That person has certain vulnerabilities at home, meaning that they feel that there is something lacking in their marriage. There's a change in the household dynamic. Say, for instance, you and your spouse have a new baby, or another relative. You have a sick parent, a sick grandparent that comes and your attention is diverted away from your spouse, and your spouse feel like they are not getting enough attention, and your attention is distributed in multiple places, they feel that something is lacking. Another thing is extreme busyness. We love to get to the bag. We love to get this money, or get this shmoney, like Cardi B says. There's extreme busyness. A lot of people are working extra. A lot of people are trying to keep up with the Joneses, and they're extremely busy. They don't have time for each other. And with distractions and the lack of attention can cause another issue, which is unresolved conflicts. You guys haven't taken the time to sit down and talk. Like, listen, this or that is going on, or I'm feeling this way or that. There's a lack of communication. There's conflict there that hasn't been resolved. This creates certain vulnerabilities at home. And when there's unresolved conflict, there's extreme busyness, and there's a lot of distraction. It leads to a sense of loneliness and a sense of abandonment. Your spouse feels alone. And what happens? Somebody else is there to give that attention to your spouse, or someone is there to give you that attention that your spouse is not giving you. Another thing that happens, it's a trickle-down effect. There could be miscommunication or wrong communication. This means that words are weaponized because there's a sense of loneliness, there's a sense of abandonment, extreme busyness, a lack of attention. It leads to resentment, meaning the person is mad deep down inside and they want to take it out in some kind of shape, form, or fashion. Another dynamic that I see is when people disconnect, people grow, people are not the same, and they feel that maybe they're incompatible with their spouse and maybe they made a mistake. But we all change and we all grow over time. Or at least we should. Another thing, at times, sisters, God bless you, but what I'm going to say, I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm just keeping it 100. There is a withholding because you feeling some kind of way emotionally. There's withholding of sexual intimacy. You know what I'm talking about. So this is another thing that leads to a disconnect. There's a disconnection involved, which then leads to sexual dissatisfaction. Now, let me be clear. Sexual dissatisfaction could come from multiple places, and I will touch on a few briefly. Sexual dissatisfaction can happen when you compare your spouse to previous sexual partners. I'm not going to elaborate on that too much. Sexual dissatisfaction can also come from the consumption of porn and masturbation. Tough. I know these are tough things to talk about, but they have to be talked about. Watching porn and masturbation, it'd take a lot to please you, or you get used to your hand or whatever device you're using to pleasure yourself. Masturbation desensitizes your sexual organs. And fellas, masturbation could cause, and porn consumption could cause erectile dysfunction. Yeah, this is hard to talk about, but you got to talk about it. Sex toys desensitize you, and they damage with extensive use, they damage your sexual organs down there. I want to get off of this. They can scratch an itch that you have in a moment, but there are side effects. Don't take my word for it. There are scientific studies that prove everything that I've said. Just Google it. Another thing that happens after you have kids and you grow older, there's a loss of physical attraction because we compare our spouses to what we see on TV and on Instagram and Facebook, in which we forget about all the silicone and the filters, makeup, weave, all that kind of stuff. And we compare our spouse to something, a fantasy, be careful. What follows is directly connected to marital vulnerabilities that we have, and I want to put a slight emphasis on the traps that we walk into without our intent, at least at the beginning. And what I mean is that these kinds of things happen without much deliberation. The first is attraction. Now you see, you have the vulnerabilities at home. There's a dissatisfaction in your marriage at home, and then boom, you come across somebody that you are attracted to. You could be physically attracted to a person, or you could be attracted to that person's personality. They could remind you of a previous boyfriend, a girlfriend that you were deeply in love with. They could be real charismatic, and you zoned in. With the vulnerabilities at home, we're going into the second stage that adultery takes. There's vulnerabilities at home. There's problems at home. And then you find someone attractive. Now, let me say this from the outset. A lot of times you can't help who you are attracted to. You don't know what it is that attracts you to this person. You just know you find them attractive. You find them charming. You find them cute. You know, be careful. So with this physical attraction, the next stage is an emotional connection. You could find yourself being nice and cordial with a person. You can have cordial conversations, and lo and behold, you have developed a connection. How do connections develop? How do connections develop? By simply talking to a person. One conversation after another. Very often those conversations become very intimate after a time. And too much talking, too much verbal communication, too much being nice leads to intimacy. Now, I know you may be thinking, how can two people become intimate by just talking? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's clarify some things. What is intimacy? A lot of people limit intimacy to sexual encounters, but intimacy is not limited to sexual encounters. It's not limited to sexual encounters. The Webster's Dictionary defines intimacy as close familiarity or friendship or closeness. Let's also remember that one of the synonyms for intimacy is acquaintance. Yeah. So we know that intimacy begins with simple, a lot of times innocent. It begins with a simple, innocent, cordial conversation. This is why opposite sex friendships can be very dangerous, because you could find yourself being intimate with somebody that's a friend. You're sharing intimate details. And the trouble comes in when you're having problems at home, you have unresolved conflicts, you have extreme busyness, you have all this stuff going on at home, and then you develop intimacy with a friend of the opposite sex, and you're in real trouble if you find your friend that's of the opposite sex attractive. Do y'all remember that song by Usher, You Make Me? Usher. You know Usher.
Hands up, here we go. Drop them. Hey, oh, hey, hey, watch this. Just when I thought I said.
Yeah. All right, let's consider a verse from this song, You Make Me. Now, you can sing it along with me. I know you know it. It says, before anything began between us, you were like my best friend. The one I used to run and talk to when me and my girl was having problems. You used to say it'll be okay, suggest little nice things I should do. But when I go home and I lay my head down, all I seem to think about was you. And you make me wanna, you don't wanna wit. Start a new relationship with you. This is what you do. Think about a ring and all the things that come along with you. Make me. Excuse my off key, but you get the point. Usher was dropping some hardcore bars in that song. So you know. That's how it starts. It starts with a person being a best friend, also being attractive, while also being intimate, because you can't talk to your spouse for whatever reason, for disputes, unresolved conflicts, problems at home, extreme busyness, resentment, and you find yourself spilling the beans or being intimate, giving intimate details about your life and about your relationship with your spouse, and you find yourself caught up with an emotional connection, which can lead to a physical connection, if you get my drift. Adultery has a beginning, either intentionally or unintentionally. It begins with problems at home, and then what follows is you find someone attractive, and then you begin to have cordial, nice, simple conversation with this person you find attractive. Then chemistry or a vibe. You got a whole vibe with this person. There's some chemistry going on and you're feeling it. You feeling this connection. So we have to nip it in the bud. And the best way to do it is to stop it dead in its tracks. When we look back at Nazir and Tanya at the beginning of this video, Nazir had got himself into some issues and he was stuck. He got her pregnant. It all started with him having problems at home and him not addressing them with his wife. And then he began to share his problems with Tanya. And then they found themselves doing something that they ought not have been doing. What can you do to avoid the same predicament? Because, truth be told, you'll get caught. We have to be aware, first and foremost, that none of us are above being able to give into this same kind of temptation. You could fall into it. You could place judgment on people that find themselves in adulterous affairs, but you are capable of giving in to the same thing. I don't care what your position is, how long you've been married, young, old, you're capable of falling into the temptation of adultery. Second, you must remember that we all have a dangerous partner. We all have someone that meets that dangerous partner profile. Meaning that there's a person that has a certain look, has certain characteristics, has a certain smell, has a certain smile, has a certain walk, talk, and we're there. Having a dangerous partner profile simply means that there is a certain person that meets a specific profile that could lure you into an adulterous affair, with or without your intent. So my advice to you is to, first of all, take care of home. Make time for your spouse. Talk and communicate with your spouse. If there are issues in your marriage, talk about it and resolve it. Another one is forgive often and always. Now, this doesn't mean forget. It simply means letting it drop. If your spouse offends you or there's something going on, communicate, verbalize, talk about it. Get it off your chest. And do it in a respectful way to where it won't cause any more friction between the two of you. Here's another one. Remember, this is for married folks. Have sex often. Have sex often. Don't withhold sex from one another. Let us consider 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 1 through 6. It says, "Now with regard to the issues you wrote about, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman, but because of immoralities, each man should have relations with his own wife, and each woman with her own husband. A husband should give to his wife her sexual rights, and likewise a wife to her husband. It is not the wife who has the rights of her own body, but the husband. In the same way, it is not the husband who has the rights to his own body, but the wife. Do not deprive one another." Being told that your rights is for another person sounds so un-American. Do not deprive each other except for mutual agreement for a specific time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Then resume your relationship. Resume getting busy. I'm just joking. So that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. Also, avoid porn, avoid sex toys, avoid comparing your spouse to previous sexual partners. Avoid comparing your spouse to the people that you see on television, social media. Don't forget about all the Botox, silicone, tummy tucks, butt lifts, filters. They will deceive you. All the makeup, they will deceive you. Don't be fooled by what you see on TV. Also, avoid being intimate with the opposite sex. Now, I must say this because I've been seeing this a lot lately, especially in Christian circles. Avoid being attached to a person or avoid being intimate with the person that you find attractive, period. Same sex or opposite sex. If you find that person attractive, leave them alone. Because there are a lot of people that have had adulterous affairs or extramarital affairs with the person that is the same sex as them. It's 2022. This stuff happens. But if you find a person attractive, avoid being intimate with that person at all costs. For those who may be stuck in adultery, for those stuck in adultery, consider this. If you're ever stuck out on an ocean and surrounded by salt water, don't drink it. The thirst is real and your need for water will be real. But salt water is not the water that will help you. Salt water contains such a large ratio of salt that it renders the kidneys unable to handle properly. The kidneys will produce increased sensation of thirst because they need water to solve the problem. If the only water around is salt water and you drink it and drink a lot of it, you are in effect adding more salt to your kidneys. The excess salt will kill you. You will end up dying of thirst in a sea of water because that water is not the water that you need. Indulging in adultery and indulging in more of what you desire will only lead to your destruction. It will lead to the destruction of your family, the destruction of your reputation, destruction of your career. Nobody likes a person that can't be faithful and committed to their spouse. Once again, my name is Jay Wilson, and here at the Truth Be Told Project, we want to help you live according to your intended design. I want to thank you for tuning in today, and I pray that you will consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to other content. Thank you for watching. Peace.
Let's go! Let's go!